But I'm about to start recording. We're officially recording. So you are on camera. Be careful what you say. Don't say anything bad. Don't say anything mean because it's recorded and it will be held against you. How you been?
I love it, man. How you doing, dude?
Good. I haven't seen you in forever. How have you been?
I've been good, man. Obviously, feeling cooped up. I think at first my natural inclination to be a homebody kind of got me through like the early stages, but there's limits to everything. You know what I mean? So
Dude, it's been a long year and I've definitely gone in waves too. Like I'm a homebody too, but not seeing anyone for like multiple days in a row can be hard.
yeah,
For years
yeah.
straight can be really hard. Definitely difficult. What's new with you? What have you been up to? How's work? You won the election, so that's good.
Me personally, exactly. It's good. I mean, like I love my job. For the first time in my career, I guess you could say, like I know I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Um, the problem is that the best parts of it are like severely limited, and like the whole reason why I love doing campaigns is like the camaraderie, like in a campaign office, with your coworkers late at night, just going over the day's events and getting ready for the next day, and being able to kind of treat the campaign space like a community center, and meet new people face to face and channel their energies into helping your client, and even just sitting across the table like in call time with my clients was great because it was just like you and the representative, and you really kind of form a bond. And unfortunately, that's just I don't have any of those things.
Why not? What do you mean?
Well, especially within the Democratic Party, when COVID hit, everything shut down. First of all, my top priority in my job as a political consultant is to raise money. And
Mm,
so when people are out of work and people are dying and people are sick, it's not only is it bad form to ask for money, but it's just not realistic because everyone was reeling, and like people think of like the financial crash in like '08 and '09 as far as like job loss and stuff, like like there were so many people out of work, and it affected so many people, not just health wise but economic wise, and so it just was just something you couldn't do. And for a hot minute there we were like, is there even like our political consultants going to be able to survive? But that quickly became nonsense to be afraid of because our clients need us more than ever. Like there's no playbook in politics
yeah, I
for.
mean, something I feel like I realized with all of this is definitely like everything changed 100%.
Mhm.
But if you were able to be flexible and maneuver and stay around, like you probably have more business than kind of ever. So
Yeah,
it's like I don't know in your instance, but like just to relate to like let's say construction. I have friends who are doing construction.
sure.
Most people who are doing construction like got jacked with the first month and like went from this much business to zero.
Yep.
But then the few people who were able to maneuver, whatever, right now there's I have like a few friends who can't stop the work. They're like, there's so much I can't even hire enough workers to do it all. But then some were never able to recover. They're like, yeah, I'm just kind of like waiting. And I feel like the same thing with like restaurants. Some restaurants were able to like get their outdoor dining and this and that, or like quickly go to takeout only, whatever, and they have a shitload of business. But some restaurants literally haven't sold anything in a year. Um,
I mean, that's probably a good point. So it was like a combination of your flexibility and adaptability, but let's be honest, also your circumstance when it came down.
sure.
That it's arbitrary, but it was totally relevant that even if you have the motivation, incentive, and the ability to adjust, some people just got steamrolled and
Oh,
they didn't really have much of a choice.
without a doubt, yeah.
Um, if your client, like, depending on who your clientele is, whether it's construction or not, or in the restaurant industry, some people just saw their entire market disappear
Mm,
based off of what they were doing, especially if you were catering to people on a budget or people that have been adversely affected by the pandemic in whatever way. um you probably never came back, or if you are back in some kind of way
doesn't
scaled
look
back,
the same.
you're struggling. Like it's not the same.
Yeah, yeah.
So I think it was
So what's your campaign look like right now? Or what are you campaigning on, or what are you doing?
my big thing is a candidate in Bucks County who is running for district attorney. It's the last Collar County in Collar County, or the county surrounding Philly.
Bucks County, is that a county of pirates or deer?
Both, actually, both. Lots
Okay,
of deer, lots of pirates. Believe it
got
or
it,
not,
got it.
even though it's landlocked, it's right there on the border with Jersey. So all those pirates just came right on over.
Got it, got it.
No, but yeah, Bucks is the last DA's office that's held by a Republican, so it's a high priority to flip that district. It went for Joe Biden last year, that the county did, but a lot of the local candidates did not fare as well because from the public's perception, a lot of the sitting Republicans are seen as kind of those moderates who are a rare breed these days, and for better or for worse, whether the public is right or wrong about their politics, they're seen as moderate. They're
Well,
kind of
Toomey was one of the Republicans to actually vote uh, in the impeachment against Trump. So like
yeah,
that might
and
be a little representative of that.
it's definitely representative of Southeast PA Republicans. But the rest, but even then, actually, it was pretty extraordinary to see him do it. And I think that was less to do with his constituency, because even in Bucks, you
Is
know, the
I think it was
white it was more about that he's stepping down.
yeah, so he doesn't have
And
as much to lose.
he was like, I can vote. I literally have the choice to vote my conscience. Now, I would argue that even a Republican that was going to run again, if you don't have the political courage to vote your conscience, and that the job is more important to you, I feel like part of this work, you can kind of find yourself in a bubble as far as how you think about things, and like it becomes everything, and like an existence outside of politics becomes you get afraid to even think and contemplate of getting beat. In the next election, it becomes a politician's greatest fear
Right.
in many ways, depending on the person. So, it's not surprising to see probably a lot of Republicans that publicly don't like Trump and don't align with Trump and have never held those type of politics end up making those choices to support him because they were afraid. And
Yeah.
it. I can to a certain degree intellectually I can understand that. It's also easy for me to say because I'm the consultant behind the scenes. Like I don't have a lot on the line. If I mean, obviously success, like success is defined, certain ways in my business, and it can be, kind of there's a lot of gray area, but for a candidate, in the end, all you have is win or lose,
Right.
um, so, but really, I think we're seeing the same thing play out in the states as nationally, that the Pennsylvania Republican Party has, whether the leaders actually like believe it or not, has been totally hijacked. It's like completely radicalized.
Yeah.
And
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised though if I feel like a lot of the things that happen on the Republican side happen on the Democrat side too, and a lot of I feel like a lot of people don't realize that it's a lot of like the same thing. So, for example, it's not exactly the same, but with people just like not voting for what they think, just voting because they want to like save their reputation or whatever. I feel like some Democrats maybe agreed with some Trump policies of the last four. It definitely didn't disagree with every single one of them, but because agreeing with Trump the last 4 years could have like killed your career, you ended up not seeing people like agree with him ever. So like I feel like it's not the same extent, but the same thing that happened with not voting against Trump because you're trying to save your election, whatever. The same thing kind of happened on the other way of people didn't vote to support some of his policies just because they're like, oh no, I can't see supporting anything of his. When it's like, hey, maybe that policy, the one of 100, wasn't that bad. Like, I don't think he was great, but I don't think 100 of his policies were horrible. I think there might have been one that has value. But
I think that commonality, you're bringing up is a fair point as far as what unifies just people in general, and then how they make their political considerations. Is there's like an incentive structure, tribalism plays into it, bias plays into it, common sense and conventional wisdom, and whether it's based in truth or not, definitely is universal. And I think you'll agree with this. The slippery slope about discussing those similarities and commonalities amongst the bases, the extremes of both parties are the playing field, and the individuals you're talking about and the consequences of their radicalization. So I would make the argument that the radical left and the way they behave and the things that they're focused on are less of a threat to the country than the radical right, because let's face it, the radical right is the Klan.
Yeah.
Which is the most dangerous domestic terrorist organization that the nation's ever seen.
Right.
And no matter how that manifests itself, there's just pure like right, fascists, like anti-government groups. There's white nationalists. There's neo-Nazis, traditional KKK, whatever. But in the end, it's all the Klan, right? Because it's America, and that's what it basically is. That's where it kind of all stems from. Whether you're just anti-immigrant or, focused on Jewish conspiracies or whatever. And whereas on the left, and not to belittle this, but you've got like eco-terrorism is a thing that's alive and well in the world, and Antifa, and people that are extremely upset about financial crimes that have gone unpunished. And so you do have radicalization amongst the left. I just think that the difference is when they're not like blowing things up and storming the Capitol and shooting people necessarily.
Yeah, no, I agree. I'm not saying, and I wasn't saying that they're equal at all. I'm just saying
No.
There's similarities on both sides, and I feel like obviously they're not equal, but I feel like a lot of times the people who are those both opposing ends don't even realize how similar they might be.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I know it's not the same, but don't you realize how that could be seen similarly to this or whatever? That's really the point I was
and that's what I was saying, is that like you're absolutely right about the similarities and commonalities, that the same stuff in there that's going on in their heads, as far as feeling I'm absolutely right about this stuff that I know to be true. Like I'm absolutely right. And there's no conversation, there's no discussion, there's no exploration has kind of stopped. They've reached a conclusion, and that's the dangerous part.
Yeah.
And that's the connect, that's the bridge, right? You and I both agree. There's like it's uneven playing field. It's a false equivalency. It's a narrative that the right especially likes to push in order to justify their demagoguery and their shortcomings. And people on the left cry foul, like myself. But then, though, in the space that we're having it, where we both understand what the other is saying, you're right. It all feeds into the same freaking thing, which is I know for sure, I know for a fact that I'm right, and that is inherently dangerous, whether it results in violence or not.
And I mean, that's kind of why I think we're still in a very, very dangerous time period, and that like everything's not over. I hope everything's over, and whatever was crazy of the last year we never see again. But I can't help but feel like something's brewing and it's gonna come back. I don't know if it's gonna be within a year or 4 years, but like what we saw January 6th, I can't help but feel is something like that's gonna happen again because of what you're saying of the both sides literally feel like the other is completely wrong and
Yep.
doesn't feel like there's like any aspect of truth to what they're saying. And it's like when you don't think that the other side is right at all, what are you gonna do? You're probably gonna like end up fighting.
Yeah.
Like, and
Yeah.
that's just like I think that's dangerous. I don't know when it changed, but I feel like the country used to be, oh, you think that, I think this. What's somewhere in the middle that we can kind of work towards? And you're in power, so we're gonna lean probably a little more towards that. But you're taking into account what I'm saying too. So like just to come up with a relevant example, the two sides, one wants minimum wage increase and the other side doesn't want any minimum wage like at all. They want everything private. Right now, I feel like one side saying fuck it, the other side saying 15 or nothing. Ideally, 20 years ago, maybe we would have compromised and said $15 minimum wage over the next 15 years so businesses can work towards it and they can have tax incentives for if you pay 20 employees this much, whatever. And then Republicans would have been like, oh, we get tax incentives, so it's not that bad. And Democrats would be like, oh, but the bottom line is still $15, so that's good. And we would have come to a mediation where now it's like, it just seems more like, nope, it's either what I say or nothing. I don't know if that's the best example, but
No, I always wonder about, is that because they're like civic engagement, there's more, like, is it because a diversity of opinions has caused this unintended reaction or consequence? Because I feel like, so like
I think it's
inclusion
because of
is,
social media. I think
you
social media.
you think it's social media?
Yeah, it's because people have this the echo chamber, and they everything they think is backed up by like targeted ads that they're getting and targeted like news articles that they're getting, and then they're like, yo, everything I see says minimum wage should be 15 because it's going to get better economy, better this, better that, whatever. But then the other side literally sees none of those articles. They see articles that say $15 minimum wage will be horrible and that privatization is the way for whatever and all that. And they get the echo chamber that they're right. And then they just, both sides just hear that they're right, they're right, they're right, they're right. And then when they hear the other side, they're like, this guy's an idiot, or like, fuck this guy, I don't want to hear it.
So
And
you're talking about reinforcement of bias,
right,
that and that social media like juice that up.
right.
I wonder, because where the direction and the place, the sources of this information,
Mhm.
social media juiced it, but what about the decision makers on the other side, whether it's corporations trying to sell you something or political party trying to sell you something? I feel like at a certain time post World War II, there was a deliberate decision in politics, and then it's kind of seeped over in anything, just to
Happy
we're gonna
420.
Happy 420. We're gonna stop. We're gonna stop cooperating. We're gonna start selling a bill of goods to the American public, and we're gonna go on an offensive to rewrite history. Rewrite the way we think about things, and people are gonna blink because I think human beings have really short memories collectively, and they're just going to wake up one day and then be like, this is how it always has been. So the way we think about guns, this is how it's always been.
Well, 1984 kind of alludes to that. Like you start erasing history or changing history, and then people literally don't even know how to figure out if that's how it's always been. Because like the history books literally say it.
And of course, my own biases come into play when I bring this up, but I feel like in large part of this, certain conservative groups went out to deliberately start reframing how we talk about this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Because you go back to the 1950s and there is no individual understanding in the average American's mind that I'm allowed to have whatever gun I want.
Right.
that the American public didn't view the Second Amendment as being this absolute individual right
No,
to
it's for
whatever gun you
muskets
want.
and a militia,
And
not
you
for
know, yeah,
AK-47s and combat gear.
yeah, you know, and this obsession with it that we can have a small percentage of the world's population, yet 46% of its guns. You know, like that's mass psychosis. It borders on it at least, but to be less high, you know, it's not hyperbole. That is hyperbole, but what I think was more reasonable is just that over time you repeat something, and that's a maximum within politics. You repeat it enough, people start, it seeps in, and whether they mean to or not, they start assimilating it, and it starts becoming a part of their thinking.
Mhm.
And everything from like what we eat to, you know, like I think, and a lot of it I think becomes to a consumption. We really shifted, and it became about consuming media, consuming ideas, consuming like everything, and we're we're addicted to it now.
Yep, I agree. But what's called? I'm sorry to cut you off or stop you. I know you have a meeting coming up in 5 minutes, so I don't want to stop so abruptly. This was super fun.
Yeah,
It was so awesome to see your face. I haven't seen it in so long. We talked about politics, which is enjoyable. We didn't even get to talk about like too many fun things.
that's true.
So perhaps I mean, maybe politics ends up being what we talk about, and that's our little angle. But perhaps we do this again next week, maybe same time, and keep the conversation going.
I'd
Um,
like to ask you about kids and teaching and the kind of virtual, like I honestly am really curious to hear about, you know, on your end, because you've got a diverse array of stuff that you got a lot of, you know, pokers in the fire, a lot of hands in the pot, you know, whatever euphemism you want to use. And so I'm actually really curious. We just ended up talking about
no,
politics.
no, no, it's cool, and I like politics. I love
Yeah,
hearing your input. So we have plenty to talk about next week. I would bet we're not going to finish talking about it next week, so we're going to have to talk about it again in 2 weeks.
absolutely.
But
Absolutely, man.
I'm gonna send you an invite, and we're gonna keep the conversation going again next week. We'll
Cool,
talk
dude.
more about maybe like censorship, social media, politics, and then virtual working and teaching and all that.
That'd be
Um,
awesome, dude.
I did want to mention though, I was gonna throw it in before it worked perfectly, but then it like kind of passed. I just want to mention taking vaccines from someone who needs a vaccine wouldn't be a good practice. I was planning on doing it this weekend. I did not do it though. I saw that there was actually a large demand for the vaccines at the free clinic. So like, all right, if there's actually people who need it, going to get it.
That's awesome.
That's not going to be me. I
Yeah.
would have gone if there wasn't a long line though, but I just want to make sure you know that.
Good.
And,
I was thinking about you there because I absolutely understood your thinking. If
Yeah.
there wasn't a demand, because you hear the stories, you read it in the
Yeah.
paper of certain geographic areas because of whatever planning issue, you know, people didn't show
Bill
up.
Gates
They didn't
is
want
trying to control us all.
Yeah, you don't want to jump the line. I mean, well, some people are jumping the line, like those two girls in Florida dressing up like grandmothers.
Dude, that was
but-
crazy.
you know, don't hate the player at the game, but you know, still, I appreciate that you found out, you did your research, and turns out there's a huge demand, and you don't
Yeah.
want to jump in front of somebody who's perhaps more vulnerable or in a position that puts them more at risk. So
Definitely. Another day though, I might not do the same. Who knows?
who knows? Every day's a new day, baby.
Yeah. But yo, love seeing you. Say hi to Stevie for me. I'll see you next week, baby. Have a great
Hell
rest of the
yeah,
day.
dude. See you next week. Love